those trees laying blocking the water. What's up with that?
Yeah, and they came on Friday or Saturday morning and loaded some out and just muddied up everything. And they came back the next day and I said, no, you're not loading any more trees up.
Trees are like 2 feet of water in trees. They
Yeah.
put them in a low spot.
They're just getting filled up a little bit. They're getting heavy.
To cut those trees.
No, we don't have to have one. Don't mention it. They told me before I was grandfathered and I didn't have to do it for that. And I don't want to hear any more about that because I was not popular with the tree ordinance in the first place. I didn't think we needed it.
That's kind of crazy.
I still think it is. I thought we were going to revisit it, but we never have. But.
It's good.
So we'll be talking about that in this little thing today too, by the way, because
there's trees involved.
trees involved. Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you look at them, I
Yes,
think
we
they're all
have that, yeah.
scrubby, just terrible things. Black cedars and stuff that just came up and are just nasty.
Right. The weed trees.
Yeah, it looks bad. Well, we have all our board members here. And it is 6:30 based on my phone. Pretty good.
My phone's
Oh,
broken.
thank you.
We get the,
Time. Yeah, right on.
you get the help.
My
to be
lady
quiet
does
down over
fun
there.
stuff with them all the time.
Yeah.
I just go in and tell her, do something pink
I
or
just throw it
something,
at
do
them.
something cute.
My little one, I think it's ordered.
Paints and those things. She
Yeah.
paints them and then glues them on.
Didn't even notice.
There's all kinds of designs. That's why I notice them.
All right, it's 6:30. We want to get to call the meeting to order. First of all, it's Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have a roll call, please. Here.
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 Here?
Here.
Here. Okay, full board. Our audience is kind of minimal here, so I think we need to introduce our audience member here. His name is Jacob. Alexis might be, are you going to say a few words first, or you can let him introduce himself?
Would you like to? Sure. Thanks.
All right, good evening. My name is Jake Van Boxel. I'm a principal planner with McKenna. I'm going to be helping Alexis out with some of the site plan reviews, planning elements of what McKenna provides to essentially open up her schedule to focus solely on the ordinance rewrite. So a little bit about myself. I have been with McKenna for about a year. I have about a dozen years experience, previously having served as a city manager, a village manager, and planning director for multiple communities across the state of Michigan. So looking forward to working with everybody and getting involved. So,
Welcome aboard.
Welcome.
Good to meet you.
All right. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda as provided? Now, there was a revised agenda. Does everybody have a revised one?
Oh, yeah, I forgot.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve it, or is there any changes we need to make to it?
The only revision was getting rid of the dirt works, right?
Yeah, I believe so, yeah, special
Yeah.
land use and site plan
So I'd make a
application.
motion to approve the minutes based on no dirt works.
It's been moved by
Second.
Ray, second by Derek, to approve them as presented, or as revised as presented. Any discussion? Those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed, same sign. Motion passed. Public comment. We could have Jacob comment. He's the only public here tonight. All right, I think we can close public comment. Public hearings, there's none. Approval of the minutes from March 11th.
Well, it's not right, is it?
What?
Such a statement.
Well, it went from doing the thing we were doing with dirt works, which was all we did, and then it went into the election of, we did that the previous month.
Yeah. Oh,
Oh, maybe
I mean, when we got rid of dirt works, that took forever. We didn't even do the.
thought we-
We didn't go over the stuff.
It's the other page.
Glenn, have you not read this?
I read it, and I thought they shouldn't say a point, but I didn't notice it was the wrong month.
I forgot
That's right,
to print it
that was
out.
February.
Bring it with
What that should have been with. We didn't do it in January, because that was my comment from before.
Yeah, we
It
did
said you
that,
had to do
yeah.
it.
I just didn't, I copied over and I
Yeah, I'm-
have to take the
I
balance out.
am. You do a wonderful job. I'm not picking on you. I'm just saying that part of it we didn't do.
Yep.
We got to the part of the dirt works being over. We decided to put off the fact of doing the stuff
Old
for our
business.
zoning rule ordinance and stuff, and we called it a night.
I'll read you one and bring them back next month.
So does that mean we have to make a motion to,
Just no action.
no action? We're gonna put that aside. No action.
All right, I don't think we have to vote on that. So did we have that last month? Did we have our election recorded? Because I don't remember.
We did that in February.
February. Yep, I know.
Is
Anyway,
it-
we can look at that in the future, I guess. I don't still see it
I
in my.
just saved, like I saved
Yep.
the format and then I erased it
Yep.
all and I didn't erase it all.
All right, we'll deal with this next month then.
We'll have to approve 2 of those next month.
Yeah.
All
I
right.
don't know. We only get so many votes, so. Once you run
I'm
out,
sorry.
unless you get the rollover votes.
All right, communications, we have none, so we can go on to old business. And that's Alexis for Holly Township zoning ordinance diagnostics for review and discussion.
Moving right along. We're doing really good. This is good.
Don't say anything.
I know.
Last
Right.
meeting I thought we were moving
Sorry.
along
Yeah,
to
we
a
can get out
point.
here at midnight. It's crazy.
I didn't get it complicated.
I like the creative drawing there. That's good.
Yeah, you got the crafty chair.
So, working on the technology so that we can have some more consistent
What?
screen sharing.
There you go.
You know, I know some IT guys.
I'm keeping quiet.
Good evening. Thanks all for having me tonight. So, as was mentioned at our last meeting, we did not get to this item, and in your packets from last time and this time, I believe, from March 3rd, the takings memo, did we include that in your packet?
That was from last month, right?
It was, but we hadn't gotten to the actual discussion. No big deal. So I think from our March packet, you'll have, and I hope you keep them in your records, your packets, a memo dated March 3rd. It's titled Takings Overview. So if you recall, I guess it would have been back in February, we talked about nonconformities. I presented a memo on what are nonconformities, what does it mean to have a nonconforming use or a nonconforming structure, and in March, we have included a memo about takings, and so really what I've been trying to do with this is prepare you all for when we have a draft to present, because with nonconformities and takings, which it's a government taking, so it's hard to describe if you guys didn't have the memo in front of you, but these are elements that we'll want you to be aware of as you're reviewing the zoning ordinance, because when you provide feedback and when the township makes changes to the zoning ordinance, it may result in new non-conforming structures. It may result in potential rezonings of properties, and so with the taking, really what it means is if a municipality is rezoning a property, so a taking can occur in a variety of ways, but for rezoning, there are certain vested rights that that property owner has with, prior regulations. And so when the township goes to change regulations, we just want you all to be educated and feel empowered to answer questions when you might get questions from residents or as, again, you're reviewing the draft. So that's kind of what I wanted to talk about tonight. So, as Jake mentioned, it's been difficult for me to focus on preparing the draft for you, and I think that we had talked about bringing some advanced text amendments, some things that we might try to adopt ahead of this schedule. So for the overarching ordinance update, we have an anticipated adoption in November of this year. Obviously, that's going to be quickly approaching as we have to fit in a public comment period. The ordinance will come before this board at least twice Before we'll ask for a recommendation to send it to the township board, who will have the ultimate authority to adopt the updated ordinance. And so the township has continued to become busier with casework, and by bringing Jake in to work with applicants and work on site plan reviews, he'll start coming to regular meetings and presenting those cases to you all. And I will still be working in the background on the ordinance and then ultimately bringing you a draft, hopefully next month. And so I guess before I keep going, I wanted to pause and see what questions you have at this point about the ordinance update, because it's been a bit inconsistent, our discussions about it. I think the last time we had a full discussion, where we sort of landed was talking about ideas in the master plan that are informing the update that maybe there was some disagreement about or questions about, and I had recommended that you all, review the master plan, specifically the zoning component of that, and I just want to see where you all are at. Are you feeling up to speed on things? Because if I come back with a full draft, which it'll be substantial. In the online form, it's hard to tell, but the full ordinance itself will be probably about 150 pages. And so I, present these memos and ask where you're all at in terms of, do you feel like you're ready to review that? Are there things that I can address before we bring you a draft? So I'm looking for feedback here.
I'm not sure without seeing where we're at this point, because I know we talked about some changes, but I don't know what has really been made. So I think my suggestion would be to get us at least the changes you're suggesting, so that we can actually look at it before the next meeting, and we could probably comment before the next meeting. So
Sure. So if you recall, back in December, we had presented the zoning ordinance diagnostic. And that is exactly what you're getting at. It's a summary of the intended changes to the ordinance. I think at that time, I don't recall very many questions specifically from the commission. We then had a canceled meeting in January. We discussed this a bit in February. We talked about nonconformities, and there were questions about, if the regulation changed, what does that mean for me as a property owner? And then in March, we spent a long time talking about some cases and then didn't end up talking about it. And so obviously we've only kind of talked about it every other month, but if it's helpful to revisit the diagnostic, then I think we should do that. We can send that back out. Obviously, we're talking back in December, you had received a copy of this. And this slideshow does include some, there we go. So, in terms of the key changes we're talking about, if you recall, I mentioned quite a few times that the ordinance broadly is just outdated. So there are a lot of things in there that haven't been revisited for many years. So one of the primary focuses of the update is just modernization, taking a look at procedures, taking a look at definitions. There are many missing pieces of information in the ordinance. So, for example, our rezoning. We don't have any clearly stated rezoning process. That doesn't mean that we can't process rezonings, but the procedure that an applicant has to follow and criteria that this commission might use to make a decision on a rezoning is non-existent right now. So a big focus of the update is simply filling gaps, particularly with procedure, but also modernizing it, making it so that there are possibilities for waivers or reasonable concessions, which right now the ordinance does not provide. For example, with parking. In many communities, if it's reasonable, say there's, a certain calculation of required parking spaces, but for whatever reason, and in a certain instance, they don't need that many parking spaces, the planning commission isn't able to provide a waiver. Right now, Holly's ordinance does not have that option, and so it sort of ties both our hands in terms of how we're applying regulations for these cases. And additionally, a big focus is aligning the ordinance with the master plan. So we talked a lot about how the future land use plan and the master plan is relatively similar, really broadly very similar to your existing zoning map. So by and large, most of what is planned for the future in Holly is already as it exists. Large lots, agricultural use, open space, maintaining and preserving natural features. These are all themes in the master plan. But in some areas, particularly the red areas that we talked about, the rural town center, which is where almost all of the township's commercially zoned property sits, there is a more drastic change that would be needed within the ordinance to align it with the master plan.
And Alexis, now a lot of those like changes from the rural town center, were those mainly pushed from the last master plan review? As that was where, I guess that would be, because the master plan obviously is, I guess a little bit of help would be kind of like on what triggered the changes, I guess, on the new zoning and stuff that was from the last master plan review, because a lot of us were all this year. We just all came in here too,
Yes,
so
absolutely.
we weren't here for all of that. So now we're catching all of this, and now we're kind of having those disagreements, I guess.
Yes.
So if it was, that would help me out though, to say, hey, a lot of this stuff comes from the content on these 20
Those
pages.
Sure.
Just,
Well, here's what I'll do. I just need a pen.
kind of help us study a little bit.
I'll make a note to send you some
Yeah.
specific pages. I think that, with the last master plan update, a lot of what you see in the future land use map, which is on the left side here, was already in the plan in its previous iteration. So state law requires municipalities to update their master plan at least every 5 years. It often doesn't happen that frequently, and so the former plan was adopted in 2016. All of these ideas were also in that master plan, and as I understand it, have been built upon and developed over the course of time. So I don't think that McKenna was the firm to prepare the plan prior to 2016, and so we don't have that institutional knowledge, but most of the general ideas that we're talking about, especially with the Rural Town Center, which is highlighted here, having the walkable mixed-use area for the township, has been in the master plan since 2016. And so, to answer your question, the township as an institution and as a municipality, as a community, has been planning towards this for many years. In 2020, yeah, please.
So when you say it's in the plan, does that mean it was signed, sealed, official, or is it just has always been talked about since 2016? When's the last time it's been as like an official
Approved, right?
approved date?
Yeah.
When was
Yeah.
the last time it was officially approved?
Last year, wasn't
So the
it?
update was in
Yeah.
2024. So the prior
2020.
planning commission, to the folks that are new on the board, were there, Mike, Glenn, Ray, during that process. And,
Okay.
when a community goes to update their master plan, there is an element of public outreach. So I know there was a survey done, and some of this was before my time. But outreach can also be difficult. You know, you can't force the community to take a survey, so it may not be that every single resident had an opportunity to take the survey and weigh in detail. But when the master plan is adopted, there is, you know, and it's required by state law, so there are public notices and efforts to incorporate input. So it's not just, oh, this is what we've always done, let's adopt it again. There is an effort to see, okay, does this still resonate? Is this still the path we want to go down? But again, the state requires that the plans are updated every 5 years. And so that means it's not necessarily set in stone.
Okay, so the plans approved last year, that doesn't mean any zoning or anything's changed, it's just like, hey, we have an idea, we wanna do this, and everyone blessed it. But it actually doesn't, I don't wanna say it doesn't mean nothing, because everyone put a lot of work into it, sorry.
But nothing
but
changed.
It's,
Nothing
yeah, it
changed,
doesn't actually change
yes.
anything, it's just this is the
Trajectory.
goal, yeah, exactly, this is where we wanna get to.
Direction.
Right, so, okay, so the group agreed on that, and now I'm assuming the zoning stuff we're gonna be talking about soon here is about how to make that actually more realistic, because right now, without the zoning changes, it's just a plan.
Exactly,
Okay.
exactly. And in the plan, there is what's called a zoning plan. So it correlates what's your current zoning district makeup, what are the density requirements there, and aligns it to the future land use categories. So there are some communities that they are built out, maybe similar to the village. There's not much drastic change happening because all the property has been developed. It just kind of is what it is. So their master plan may not have, it may not necessitate such a drastic change. But with Holly, the master plan has been updated every so often as required, but the zoning ordinance didn't get updated in a comprehensive way, as far as I know, since maybe the 90s. And so there, again, the alignment with the master plan is a big component, but in terms of updating the ordinance, a really critical piece is modernization, clarity. Part of why it's been difficult to review applications is because the ordinance is not helping us out here. It leaves a lot of room for uncertainty, and there are also things that are simply outdated in terms of there have been Supreme Court cases. There are certain things that have been rendered unconstitutional. So when we talk about updating the ordinance, there's a lot of logistical things that we'll address. But with the zoning map, that's where the biggest change you'll see in terms of alignment with the master plan. So again, most of the township in the dark green and all of the very, very light green is intended to stay AGRE, and that's how it's zoned today. Similarly with the Rural Town Center, it's zoned commercially, and at least in the Fish Lake Grange Hall area, we have that overlay district that does get at a lot of these ideas, having walkability and mixed use options and more compact development that has a focus on visual appeal. You know, we've talked about architectural standards and things like that. And so,
And the ordinance is helping narrow that down,
exactly,
right? And
more specific
then when
requirements.
it's specific requirements, the ordinance is now passed, so you had to abide by the ordinance unless you're, non-conformity or something like that would have to be approved. So obviously we gotta be careful on what the ordinance is gonna be. We're rezoning the ordinance area for like that rural town center. There's a lot of businesses involved. There's a lot of things that are going on there. I guess one of my questions, because we've been kind of looking at this and looking at even at the master plan, and again, it always goes back to sidewalks. I would love to see sidewalks through there.
Yes.
I would love it to all of it be walkable. But we've been approaching all these businesses with 8-foot wide sidewalks, and I'm kind of like, I could drive my pickup truck down that, no problem. And then I'm looking at any of the other sidewalks in any of the near around towns. I'm saying, what's the overall, how do we make that actually a reality? It'd be cool if we could, But it's like, you know, and then even construction material, you're talking coming into these businesses, and it's like, you're paying for flat work, you know, per square foot. So you're paying for 2 sidewalks, essentially.
That's a great point.
So it just it's making something a difficult obstacle, I feel like, for a lot of the businesses in those areas. We've kind of already seen it so far, you know? And
Sure,
let's make a plan that can make it happen, you know?
right.
In some cases, we probably should be linking up with Genesee County, which is doing walkable paths all the way west of us, I believe, for ways. The trails, they call them, I guess,
Right.
for that, but that allows people to move around other than being on the roads.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. And again, we're dealing, even the rural town center area, it's still somewhat rural in that
Yeah.
area, and some of the ground is state land right around you
Right.
that, I don't know who would be responsible.
And if
Like,
state land like ran a bike path to my property, like absolutely, let's hook it up. You
Yeah.
know? An 8 foot, if I'm like, let's say, and again, it could happen too, let's say my sign is like trash, right? It's about needs to be replaced. I can just replace the old piece in the sign and not change my site plan. If I get into a whole site plan review, I'm most likely gonna have, I believe, an 8 foot sidewalk going to the trees and going to a power station.
Right.
And then I'm looking at that, and that's an ordinance, but it's kind of like,
Yeah.
what's the sense
And
of
you're
that?
talking about when you're
You
saying
know.
it goes to trees and it goes to,
Yeah, like
gaps in
one state
between.
land is complete state land out of anybody's control for what's gonna go on over there. And then the other one's really Consumers Energy substation, and they have all their drainage system and everything all set up the way they do, so they ain't changing nothing. And they're not gonna change their sign or the way their fence looks or something in order to fall into a situation where we could make them change it. So it'll be like that for the next 50 years.
well,
You know.
and part of, so what I'll say is in the master plan, I can get my mouse.
Like, I do like the whole rural town center thing, I think is a great idea. It's just,
And really,
Let's
the only
make it
place that's
work right,
appropriate for
you
this,
know.
what is set aside is really in your area there on
Yeah.
Fish Lake and Rage Hall Road. We don't have any other place.
We got
It-
the spot on Dixie near Belvedere.
A little bit.
Too.
I don't understand that spot, but that's what they,
Yeah.
and
So,
I just wanna see in the master plan too, on that spot, like, why do we, I mean, I understand the utilities and stuff like that, but
yeah, so
interesting goal.
the map that I got shown here, it's the safety path master plan.
Yep.
This is in the master plan, and this is specifically cited in the ordinance right now in terms of when a pathway installation is required. It
Mhm.
cites this exact map. Now, this map,
Range
let's
Hall.
see, was originally, at least the most recent update to it was in 2016. So when we
Okay.
did the 2024 update of the master plan, it really is an update. So sometimes municipalities, when they come up on their 5 years, decide to overhaul. Let's start from scratch. We need to re-review in depth all of the components of our master plan. In 2024, the township at that time decided, well, we only just did this in 2016. We think this is mostly still relevant. We want to just make relevant updates. At that time, I don't recall, and again, I came on kind of in the middle of the master plan process with Holly. There was another planner before myself. I don't recall specific discussions on this, but this is what we have right now. And one of the questions that arose in the previous case was, this doesn't designate, do we want a pathway on both sides of the road? Do we want it to be 8 feet or 5 feet wide, things of that nature?
Right.
But the ordinance actually does have a safety path section that defines all of that. Now, I think except whether or not it's going on both sides of the road or not, that would typically be addressed in the master plan.
But we're
So that's-
developing that specific ordinance to kind of nail that down, right? Like when we approve this next rural town center ordinance and rezoning and everything like that, we'll know that, we're looking for this
Exactly.
specifically,
And
so.
that's kind of what I was gonna get at.
Right.
Is this is the broad vision. And the idea behind this is that you've got Grange Hall, which is the major east-west connector. When you go through the village, there's a variety of connections. You can get to a lot of different amenities, so that really makes sense at a high level. but then you get into the nitty gritty and start realizing, well, in this area there's open ditches, where do you put a pathway?
Right.
In this area it's got a consumer site, they will probably never have to be required to
Right.
install a pathway. And so this does start to become a broader conversation that we'll have to loop the township board in, because the way the ordinance is written now is if they are on this pathway where it's either green or
Mhm.
purple, we have to require them to either install it or do a payment in lieu. And so what that means is if
Yeah.
in certain instances the township finds that, and our case tonight falls into this circumstance,
Mhm.
that there will be no connections for the next decade, that it just simply does not make sense to require them to install it
Mhm.
at that time, then they can do a payment equivalent to the cost of installation into a fund of the township. And this is a very common practice in terms of how to develop a sidewalk network or a pathway network. Because then those funds can be used to fill gaps in other areas.
Right.
So, for instance, along Fish Lake on the east side, we've got a couple of properties that either are in the process of installing a pathway or will be required to upon approval.
But like, I guess now developing that ordinance on Grange Hall Road specifically, is that just at a different board meeting or something like that to dial in exactly, you know, cause like, if you're actually looking at it as a contractor or something, or whoever, to actually build this and seeing the properties it has to go through, even the south side of Grange Hall Road is gonna be more difficult than the north side. You know what I mean? Because of the, and again, it's also another consumers type thing. It's the gas line area or whatever, that whole gas section right there. And then right after that, you got storage units and everything else. So, and the way that the grade is on that side of the road, I mean, it sounds like a wish, if anything. I'm wondering, like, it'd be extravagant to get a, you know, sidewalk across there. And I just feel like as we're planning to get something done, if it was like, you know, if we focused our efforts on, hey, let's make this walkable, the north side, like, looks like a possibility. You know what I mean? So I just didn't know how do we get that dialed in, so then when we do have businesses operating, we're not just totally like, you know, taking off and going to the next town, because they're like, wow, this is like, this is crazy. You know what I mean?
So, you know, I just brought this up for
Right.
reference. This is the area we're talking about, and in terms of some sort of analysis like you're describing, like a feasibility analysis is really kind of what we're getting
Right.
at. Is it feasible to install a path here or not? And I'd like to also go back to an earlier point you made about the width. So for a standard sidewalk, 5 feet concrete is typical,
Yeah.
but for a pathway that's intended to be used by bicycles and multi-use path is what it's called. It's typically 8-foot
Right.
asphalt. And so both of those options are permitted within the ordinance. But obviously we don't want it to be, some areas are concrete, some areas
Right.
are asphalt.
That
And
was-
so
yeah.
this is really, we're making the point as to why we need an ordinance update. Is
Right.
because there are missing pieces of information, and, you know, part of what I want to continue to focus on is what you're describing, researching things so that when I bring you a draft, we're not left with something that doesn't really make sense, because, you know, this area, again, it's some of the only commercially zoned property in the township. And so, but it's not necessarily developed as a mixed-use walkable town center today. We know that to get to that vision, it may take decades to get to something like a true walkable downtown. But we do have to start somewhere, and the same goes for a pathway network or a pathway plan that connects folks from east to west or north to south. And with the Rural Town Center area, something that I'd really like to explore more is reasonable waivers. So when we have a site that's been there for 30 years, and what's there today is miles from what the master plan is calling for, building in an opportunity for that property owner and for the planning commission to say, okay, we're not gonna make you knock down your building and start from scratch, but we wanna see some sort of incremental change. And often what that has come, the form that has come in lately has been the pathway installation, because it's at least moving us in the direction of a walkable area. Additionally, some architectural features, so asking for the cupola on top of the heating and cooling pole barn. They're small things, but incrementally over time, they start to build and move us towards that vision without, again, telling people, yep, you gotta demo the whole thing and start over, none of this is compliant. And right now, the ordinance is a bit silent on incremental change, and when we have non-conforming properties, are we saying you need to get 100% full compliance with all these standards that are not necessarily acknowledging the existing development? I don't get the sense that that's how the township wants to operate, because to your point, scaring off business owners because the lengths they have to go to get compliance, there's got to be a balance that we can strike.
Yeah, we still need them here.
What's that?
So we still need them all here.
Right, exactly. And
Especially if when it's a plan that's, we're saying decades away, and here we're saying, here, spend all this right now, we need
Right.
this done.
Well,
I think like the 8-foot sidewalk is just kind of, I think it's overkill at this point, because I know it's our lofty plan way down the road, but
it'll be something that people talk about for decades.
it'll be our bike lanes of Holly Village. I'm just gonna tell you right now. I mean, it'll be one. I feel like, anyways, it'll be one of those things that nobody. A 5-foot sidewalk will be plenty. That's my opinion. But I feel
Now,
like
the
we're
other
gonna
thing,
do,
village,
overdo
in
it.
front of my office, that wasn't, I didn't have to pay for that. Now, a lot of times houses have to pay for it, but they got grants through that, and I would hope in the township, because otherwise, we're gonna be piecemeal. We're gonna be a little here, a little there, a little here,
Yeah.
and it won't all link up. It's almost as if the township has to do something as a group, and I don't know if there's funding. Would hope that there was some funding to encourage that. I know there have been for other things. Some of the road funding actually is for pathways and that, but I don't know if there's what we could do to improve, but we should pick an area and concentrate, which would be the Grange Hall Road area and probably Fish Lake Road area. And try and get some of those in there, and then we could build from that, because once you get one area started, other areas would kind of build from that probably. But you gotta get one area where it's continuous, not where there's a little bit here, a little bit there, and a little bit
Patchwork.
there.
Yeah,
we got
exactly.
this
You just gotta walk out in the middle of the road to get to the next
Yeah.
one.
You know, we got the school on the north side
Yeah.
there. It just makes a lot more sense to really, and again, like you said, if we could get some kind of grant process, and even we're focused on who we need easements from, what we have to do. It's a plan.
That's what
Maybe
the
we
board we're
haven't
not good
done
at
in a
is,
decade.
we know
have-
what grants are out
Yeah.
there and what we can do with that. That's
Right.
what we're looking forward probably to some direction there, if there is something
Some
out there.
guidance about that. Yeah. Mhm.
yeah, absolutely.
You know.
And you're right, there are definitely grants out there, and that's part of why I said with the pathways in particular, it does start to become a township board level discussion,
Right.
because we have to spend time and resources applying to the grants, and there has to be a, agreed upon approach to that. And I think that we're just at the very beginning of those conversations. And in terms of when I said decades from now, what I meant is that, when you guys have free time and you're ready to do some more homework before the next meeting, the nonconformities overview talks about how, again, if we go and change the ordinance to now, okay, the properties on this pathway, on this route, this green route, have to install a sidewalk, we're not saying you have to go out there and do that tomorrow. But when they come forward and say, well, we have a change of use, or we want to do a site plan amendment and it's a major amendment, that's the trigger point at which we can bring them up to code. And that's what we've kind of been doing with some of these properties. So with the heating and cooling property here, you'll notice there's very little vegetation other than, there's a tree right out front in the building and over to the side. But when they came for a site plan and special land use, they had to bring it up to the landscaping standards. And while that's an investment on their part, those trees will hopefully be there for decades to come, right? And if you don't require that now, then they never get planted. Same with the sidewalk. You have to start somewhere, and as properties come in and get to that trigger point of you've gotta bring it up to code to some extent, that's our opportunity to move toward that incremental vision of this walkable downtown. It does, it happens over decades because we can't force a property owner the day after we adopt our new zoning ordinance to bring it up to 100% compliance because they have this protected status, this vested right of being a non-conforming property.
So one of the things that I hear quite often is clarity. And you think one thing, then you think you've got what you need, then then there's a modification. And one of the things that in my mind is, how do we get there so that enough questions are asked? Karen does a tremendous job and does multiple things for us. But I know that she can't cover everything with an applicant. But when, at the same time, if there's clarity in it, I don't know, how many times have I called you to have you explain something to me? I've been in the game for 20 years, and I'm still looking at it going, with the doggy look, because I can't really decipher what I'm reading and how is it applicable. And for me, now being involved in this, I find it very important that the average person that doesn't understand, zoningese, they can at least have a decent understanding and then ask questions and then can follow up with, details with Karen on, this is what I want to do, what's my restriction, or what can I do? And then they don't get blindsided halfway through the process. That's what I hear. And I think that if we can figure out a way to take something that's, you got to have a law degree to understand it and read it, and try to make it so that it's at least clarified enough. I think that's really, and that's why I'm glad that you're doing what you're doing, because I think in the process of doing it, we want them here. We don't want them to feel like we're against them. We really want them to say, hey, we just have certain things that we're trying to build, and here's what we're trying to get to. So as you come in, welcome, but we want to make sure that we're trying to make sure that we're conformed with it, and we're always going to have something that's non-conforming in some ways, because we didn't have all this in play at the beginning. So, we see it quite often with zoning, with splits and stuff, where you just can't cure it. You can't, there's just not a way to completely cure it. You try to do your best, but having those basic ideas and avenues that helps the person know, so that they don't get blindsided by us maybe not agreeing with what they want to do, but yet they did all the things they were supposed to, if that makes sense.
It does. And I was trying to find a slide, I think it was in a different iteration of this presentation, that talked about one of the things in the diagnostic, the zoning ordinance diagnostic, which covers, here's the changes we'll make, is something we've called lean zoning. And it's exactly what you're getting at. If there's additional fluffy language in there that's confusing, misleading in any way, we want to make it as clear as possible for not only the applicant, but for ourselves, for you guys. I think that, back in the day, zoning ordinances were written by attorneys, and that's why they can be difficult for the average Joe to interpret.
Sure,
And so,
sure.
That's one of, again, our big goals.
Right.
It's not always necessarily that it's complicated, but sometimes things aren't clear.
Right.
So, it may be that you have to look in 3 different places of the ordinance to understand that, okay, this is going to apply to me.
And that goes with us too. Like you mentioned something earlier about clarity for things that seem logical that are non-conforming, and having the ability to actually approve something that just makes sense. But if the guideline's so rigid that we don't have any flexibility, we can't do it. We can't agree to it and approve it because it really doesn't fit. But yet it's absolutely logical that this business or that structure should be right where it's at. and
So I
that
think our example would be
desirability.
our last meeting, because the ones with Northwest Propane, what used to be Northwest Propane Plaza, felt that they'd been working on it a long time, and it just felt the goalpost kept moving. So if you had a clear idea what we were supposed to be doing, because they thought they were getting everything and they were working on it September, we still haven't approved it. So I know they felt pretty bad about it taking that long to get approval of things.
Right.
So the more clarity we have in what they're supposed to do ahead of time would
Absolutely.
be good for everybody.
Agreed, and, you know, I will say that obviously we don't have that case on the agenda tonight. We have not yet received revised site plans. I do want to make sure that we, during this discussion, talk in broad.
Okay, yeah,
broad strokes.
Right.
but that's an example of what
Well, no,
we're
but-
actually seeing though.
Yeah,
Yes,
Yeah,
and,
that's
you
what-
know,
I don't think you're gonna see a
I
second.
think that part of it is, there's a few things. We've got an outdated zoning ordinance. The township has also been receiving more applications than ever.
Yeah.
And I think that over the next few years, we'll review more cases than in the last 10 years combined, because there is just more activity, more development.
I agree.
And part of what we've been working on too is building up some internal procedures, because it wasn't necessary before. There weren't cases to be processed. And so,
Yep.
you know, we did our first conditional rezoning just last year. And so there are gonna be some pain points with that. It's getting some procedures in place both
Yep.
in the ordinance, but internally as well. We are working on updated applications that make it very clear, here's the required information we
Right.
need. Before we even get to, are you in compliance or not, we need to see, what are you proposing? And so that's been a big struggle with a lot of applicants, is that we get a very high-level drawing, and it just simply does not have enough information for me to comment on, or for the engineer or the fire department. And so we're all, I think, on the same page, though, that we're going
Yeah.
in the right direction. And again, part of why we brought Jake on is so that he can continue to conduct business for the township, which is, you know, we can't drop everything and say, pause, we need to update our ordinance, but it'll free up my time to focus on all of this, because it's obviously super important. The master plan is updated every 5 years. The zoning ordinance is not. However, minor amendments are made all the time. I mean, there will probably be some things that when we update the ordinance and we adopt it and say, okay, this is perfect, and then something happens and we realize, oh, well, we need to change that. That's not quite working. So it's a living document, but it is. It's really important that we get it right. And I think in conclusion, because we do have a case tonight that I want to make sure we get to, I will send pages from the master plan to review, and I'll also resend these memos and zoning diagnostic just so that you have it in your inbox.
Okay.
I think that you all have printed copies, but if you need a printed copy, I'm sure we can get you one of whatever you need. And I don't know that I'll have a full draft of the ordinance next month. That's my goal, but they're busy working with applicants, and a lot of them haven't even been before you yet. You know, we're still in the preliminary stages, but any final thoughts or questions, you know?
Nope, we want to keep moving on though, so,
Yeah.
yep, thank you.
I
Yep.
think we're
So
good.
Get us the information, so we're ready for the next meeting, yep.
Yes.
Are we on to new business, or? Yes, okay. New business, application from Michael Isaac, 329 Beaver Run, Holly, for a preliminary site condominium approval for Meadowview Estates, parcel ID number 01224676-007. Do we need a motion to open that, I believe, is that? For that, it's an application, okay, all right, yep, I didn't notice that, so. So it's not a hearing, we're just doing what at this point?
So it's, I'll start off by conditional rezoning that the township approved last year. And part of that conditional rezoning includes an agreement with the township. So if you recall, for a conditional rezoning, an applicant can offer unsolicited conditions on a rezoning to make it more in alignment with the township's goals and regulations. So in this case, the west side of the property, we've got Fagan Road that sort of runs up the middle of it. The property on the west side was already zoned SR, suburban residential. The parcel itself was split zoned, with the east side of Fagan being zoned AGRE, agricultural residential. The applicant came to the township and said, you know, I want to split this. I've exhausted my land divisions, and so in that case, the only way to further split the property would be through a site condominium. The site condominium is just a tool for property ownership and property division. It's essentially an alternative to the platting, which was a process that is long. You have to go through the state. It can take many years to create and develop a subdivision. The site condominium is a process that's done locally, and it allows for splitting of land. And so with the conditional rezoning, he came and said, you know, I want to do, I think the original request was 10 or 12 units, and we said, that doesn't align with our master plan. We don't want to see that much density residentially in this area. And in addition, the one side was zoned AGRE with a 5-acre lot minimum. Total area of the lot is about 15 acres. Long story short, the Planning Commission ultimately recommended approval of a concept plan similar to this that included 6 units total. He offered to provide a conservation easement along the frontage of the property. So if you see the aerial image page of the site plan, there is some substantial vegetation, particularly in the south of the lot. This was, again, offered freely by the applicant. Additional conditions were 1,200 square foot unit minimum, so all of the homes in this have to be at least 1,200 square feet. And part of that agreement with the township for the conditional rezoning was that he'd come back within a year of the approval of the conditional rezoning to get site plan approval. So for a site condominium, there are 2 steps for a site plan approval: the preliminary approval, which is what's before you tonight, and then a final approval. So during the preliminary approval, we get a pretty substantially complete site plan, all standards and regulations that are necessary, like landscaping, a pathway. In many other cases, for the development of a subdivision, you would need to build roads, sidewalks, utilities. In this case, we've already got the road running through. He's not constructing any utilities. They'll all be on well and septic, as you can see. And during this preliminary approval stage, we're saying, okay, we need to make sure your site plan is 90% of the way there. At that point, the Planning Commission can recommend preliminary approval. Then the applicant will go and prepare condo docs. So this includes the master deed that will actually split the property and define ownership rights and things of that nature, as well as bylaws. So with a site condo, it will create a little HOA. This will be a 6-unit homeowners association. These documents are reviewed then by the township's attorney, and there are some additional documents that we'll need for that final approval. Any questions so far, and then I'll be happy to walk us through the
Yeah,
review.
I just have a question between Unit 5 and Unit 6 on the boundary lines. I'm assuming there was a specific reason for the change in direction on the boundary between Unit 4 and Unit 5. It takes an immediate south turn and then goes back to the east.
Goes around the old silos.
Right. Well, that's
But
what,
that would make it wide enough. to go back.
between, is it 5 and, yeah, 5 and 6.
Yeah, so,
Mitch for driveway.
I mean, I did,
Right further away from
but I was curious.
intersection, I remember seeing that.
Right, so maybe trying to get close to the property line that way.
Okay,
this layout, the way that the boundaries are drawn, was approved as part of the conditional rezoning. There was a concept plan, so, all of the lot sizes and the layout of the parcels, align with that concept plan that was approved last year. One thing to that end, there is the silos there, and then, the way that the property sits right on that three-way intersection with Hagan, Grange, and Quick Roads. One piece of feedback that the applicant got from the road commission was to shift that driveway up as far as possible. I think that, got that right here, actually.
So that picture shows the driveway still coming off. If you made the lot line straight out, the driveway would still fit. But it makes sense to me that driveway, yes, would come further down Fagan Road instead of being on the corner. But they don't depict that here.
Yeah, so what, in terms of the,
oh, I see, yeah, I don't have that on my map, so,
Well, but if you flip your,
oh, is it inside? I didn't,
Back to this one, back to this one.
oh, gotcha, okay.
but still,
But that
The
was what I
driveway
was
comes
asking, it
straight
was
out.
for the driveway to keep it off the intersection, which I kind of thought it may have been what they were asking, but the one I was looking at, I didn't look at the backside of the other page, so they're proposing it to be
would it be
offset.
reasonable for us that we would recommend that driveway be moved further north for Unit 6 in our approval? 'Cause this picture doesn't show it that way.
and when you say
Right.
Part of the site plan.
You're looking at
The drawing,
revised. So what I've got pulled up here on the screen is actually a markup from the road commission. So
Okay.
when you're.
So yeah,
when
that
you
driveway
Yeah.
makes more sense.
Yeah.
Yes.
So is that how they would do that, you
right.
think?
Somewhere you put
Because if
red
we're
X
gonna-
on
The
it.
commission would require
Oh,
them
that's
to
good. Yeah, that looks
revise
better.
it this way.
Mhm.
And so,
Yes,
because we're at the preliminary stage,
yeah.
this was minor enough that I said, let's wait until we get all of the
Okay.
comments
Yeah.
so that they can do one revision.
Sure.
This is something that we would be, looking for before the final approval. And, you know, I guess just to dive in, because we're talking about driveways, the other thing that I noted in the review is that we have the conservation easement. There are a few quite mature trees along Fagan Road that, in my opinion, need to be preserved. The applicant offered the conservation easement. That easement itself has not yet been recorded. That will be recorded as part of the overall conducts. And so I have recommended that particularly on Unit 4, that driveway be located so as not to conflict with that tree there.
Right.
But the driveway locations themselves do have to be approved by the road commission, and so.
Right, and I don't have a problem with that, but as we're doing with land divisions, we're really focused on cleaning up a lot of unique formations. That's a good way to put it. So, but this one makes sense. This one, there's a reason and a clause or a possibility of making this move simply because of the dangers it potentially creates, and the road commission's making that recommendation. This is exactly where it fits to be actually a little non-conforming because there's reasons why it makes sense to not have a straight line for the property. So that's what I wanted to make sure that, because mine didn't show it, which now makes sense, that they're recommending that it be moved as far as it can. That makes total sense.
Yeah, and this markup was something that they sent from the road commission. It was,
Yeah,
I don't think included in your packet
Yeah, I'm good with
So
that.
Is that
Yeah.
stuff we're supposed to be looking for though, that he caught like that on this meeting, or is that the next meeting? Like if we see, if we see things in the site plan to call out, okay.
Yeah, I mean, if there are
Right.
things that you're noticing, please.
Well, I was just
call them
wondering
out.
like how the process goes, you know?
Well, I just, so on the front page of the estates, you probably should call out, not the Clinton River, but the Shiawassee River, and also the flood plan. I don't know if this is a flood plan area, but this looks like just a copy or a reuse from some other,
You said on the cover of the site plan?
yeah. It says a flood plan note, 100-year-old flood plain, 100-year flood plain is located along the north branch of the Clinton River, approximate location as shown. So, but I didn't know this was a preliminary review. So it just looks like they need to update their
Yeah,
map.
I would think, the Clinton River is not too close.
Yeah.
I would agree.
I did check, but it isn't. No, we're in the Shiawassee Basin. We're not near the Clinton River.
I see what you're saying, and I will say that,
That'll probably be handled maybe.
Press it, read
Yeah,
notes,
it'd
fine.
probably be in the updated, yeah.
to call out discrepancies like that, you know, I think I mentioned on unit one, the hatch that's shown on all the other units to show the conservation easement, that's not shown on unit one, but that is required as part of the conditional rezoning. I'm thinking that
So isn't it kind of shown along Fagan Road though, and just not on Quick Road? Right? Am I looking at that wrong?
But in the
It is, I
concept
think, here.
plan that was approved, it has it on both sides.
Okay.
Yeah, here and here,
Um,
Yep. if I'm reading that right.
What real effect is this conservation easement? It just seems like you can't use the front of your property then, all these, that would be very limited what you could do there. Is that basically what, so they can't do what, or why is it necessary? I could see if it was in a farm or something, but when it's on a residential parcel, basically, what good is it, or what is it gonna do to the homeowner in effect?
mhm. So, you know, the conservation easement was something that was offered freely.
They offered it, I know, yeah.
And they offered the location of it as
Yeah.
well. When we were working with the applicant who had said he was gonna be here tonight, you know, wanna point out that if we have questions for him, I don't know if there was a mix-up, I will be following up with him tomorrow, but, you know,
He's floating down
we
Hollywood.
can relate things to him, I just wanted to
Right.
point that out, but part of what we were looking at in terms of like a similar circumstance is the township has a cluster housing option. And in that cluster housing option, you can gain more density, which is one of his ultimate goals, was to get as many units as he could. And with that cluster housing option, there is an open space preservation requirement. And so it's sort of a nod to that, saying, hey, I'm asking for more density, but I'm offering to preserve some vegetation, some areas of this property, and, you know.
In effect, though, what does it really do? Because,
Yeah, it's just grass and trees, right?
yeah,
I mean, you
Right.
couldn't,
normally it's gonna stay that
couldn't
way
build anything
anyway.
there
You
regardless.
just, yeah, you can't build anything.
That's
And it's
just
road
the
right away,
Right.
the right away for road would go
The
as much.
setback, and the road
Well,
right setback, I mean, you couldn't do
Right,
anything
if
there.
you wanted another
You might have
garage
a
up there,
valid
you wouldn't
point.
be able to do
We've
it.
already approved it, I guess, so it's,
Right.
I just said, what good is it really for
I will
anything?
say that with a conditional rezoning, municipalities are not in any way allowed to negotiate for conditions. They
Yeah.
have to be freely offered, and so you do have to be a little careful in terms of, hey, well, why don't you put it over there, or,
Right.
you know, giving feedback in that way, and, you're right, it's grass and trees, and it's hard to tell, but some of these trees are very mature, look to be 100-year-old trees that if there weren't some sort of preservation requirement, could be torn down.
Well, we have a tree ordinance.
We do, we have a tree ordinance.
Just waiting.
They have to replace
He
Right.
likes it.
certain, counts of trees, but you can't regrow a 100-year-old tree overnight. And so there's value
Not yet. Right.
to preserving existing vegetation that has some maturity. And in terms of the floodplain, I did want to note, there is some area on this.
Yeah, that shows it right
northeast
here.
corner that's in a floodplain. I think it is a good note that we have on the plans, it's noted as a wetland. I think
Right.
on the previous iteration of the plans, it was designated clearly that it's also a floodplain.
Yep.
So.
It's probably why it's not part of the field, is actually probably why.
We can go check
Otherwise,
it.
it'd been part of that field.
We can go check it today, see if it's part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and in 80, on the conservation easement too, from my understanding, like I believe it's like 81 feet. So it's a significant part that there just can't be any structure. It's got to be natural in form, even if you plant something. It can't, you just can't put any, I'm going to call it artificial structures.
We probably have ordinances that couldn't
You know.
do much in that area anyway, is what I
But
would
you
say.
still
Right.
In
have
front
a
of the house.
requirement for how many trees you have to put in there, correct? Can I take that formula on there? Right?
There are certain things that they have to do. I don't know the
You guys handle
details
the
of that.
approval of what kind
Right.
of trees they can plant there, that's,
You said the types of trees.
yeah.
Yeah, so, this was one thing that I was hoping our applicant could clarify for us tonight.
What the
but
intent.
that we will require them to clarify before a final
Right.
approval, is the plan for tree preservation / removal, because
Right.
the tree ordinance does have some exemptions. So if there are trees that are invasive species, they're dead, diseased, if they fall within an
Get rid of the bad
intended
stuff, put in the
building
good stuff.
footprint, then you don't have to replace them. But if they are wanting to come in and clear everything outside of the conservation easement, they're allowed to do that, but they have to submit a tree survey. And what that means, or an inventory, you could say. And what that means is all trees on this site would have to be tagged, put into a table. And we did this for the senior living facility. We had to do a tree removal review, so that we can calculate how many trees they have to plant to replace. Now, we don't have a tree survey at this time. We also don't have verified plans for removal either. And so the way that I've reviewed it is that there's two components here. In terms of other broad landscaping requirements, there are two that apply. One is frontage landscaping, so like street trees, and just general site landscaping, so a 10% requirement, and this is applied to all site plans, these landscaping requirements. But existing trees and vegetation can be used to meet those requirements. And in my opinion, maintaining several healthy, mature, 100-year-old trees is more beneficial and can count towards these street tree requirements. But we need verification on the plans that they will not be disturbed. Now, in the conservation easement area,
Excuse me.
I am maintaining that the conservation easement was offered by the applicant and that no removal should be permitted. But there is a great deal of other woodlands, particularly on unit 5 and 6. But they know they are existing trees, they don't know if they are to remain or not. So that's something that we can clarify during this next stage of the review between preliminary and final. Now, at the end of the day, we have our regulations, but the applicant can propose whatever they'd like. They may say, okay, we want to clear cut it. We will go and do a tree survey. We will pay to have replacements installed, and we will submit a landscape plan. That's one option. The other is to say, we will not disturb those woodlands except for the very narrow area that we need to construct the home. In that case, I'm recommending that vegetation be counted toward the landscape requirement. If they aren't maintaining those trees, though, they'll be looking to have a replacement requirement as well as meeting the actual landscape requirements. They are cumulative. So that'd be a great deal of landscaping, but ultimately that's up to the applicant.
So what do we need to do here to get on with things? I don't think we're in disagreement about the plan. We've already approved the initial parts.
Well, I guess, are there any other questions? I'm happy to walk through other parts of the review. There's, it's very clear in the review that there's some remaining questions, but again, we're at the preliminary stage, so.
In the review on your number 2, partway down through that, I'm a little confused. The CR agreement is 1,200 square feet, or the size of the house. It says implementation of the minimum dwelling unit size would not approach 1% of the lot coverage. Thinking, there must be like, do we have a minimum? But it can't be 1%. 10%?
So the maximum, there's a maximum lot coverage
Right.
of 20%. And what we meant by that statement is that we don't have the final lot coverage because while the proposed houses are shown, they're not dimensioned. We don't have building plans yet, and we don't necessarily need them at this stage.
Right.
But we were just getting at, they're not even approaching 1%. There's a maximum of 20%,
Right.
but we don't have a concern there.
Well, you can't tell me a 1,200 square foot house, I could fit 100 of those on that lot size. It's gotta be 10%. I don't have the actual square footage lots, I guess you should figure that out. But,
That house is 2.75.
what's that?
I don't know, I'm just taking a guess at it, but I see what you're saying.
Yeah, they're, obviously, these aren't to scale,
Mhm.
but 1% is pretty small.
Yeah.
So it's,
And I'm not, that, we're
It's
not
only-
obviously
but-
proving that tonight, that's probably not a real critical thing,
mhm.
it seemed odd to me that
Yeah.
the building size was only 1% of the lot. That seems pretty small.
Because his point is you can't get 100 houses in that lot that size. So it doesn't seem quite the right proportions, the
I guess-
1%.
I think that we ran that calculation across the entire site, so
15 acres.
I'll double check in terms of, not every single unit is the same size.
Mhm.
I will, however, make a note.
And I think the main thing is it's not gonna be over 20%
And maybe
anyway.
it's
so-
just because I had the drawing here, but anyway, I'm not arguing over it. The houses don't matter. I like bigger houses myself. That's a great thing. That's way more material.
Yeah, you're just saying based on the 1,200 square foot minimum, on the overall estate would not be more than about 1%. That's all, you're just notating that. Right,
And that
right.
we will be going over 20%.
Right.
20% is the max.
You'd have to build a 7,986
So that was my,
square
it just
foot
seemed like,
house.
why?
Okay, any other direct questions then?
Actually, it looks pretty good. There's minor things with the trees and the driveway, but, he's done a lot of work on this.
Yes.
And quite frankly, it looks pretty good.
And then the other question, which is again probably minimal, back to your sidewalk thing,
Yes.
where it talked about, they're not gonna put sidewalks in, but want them to, performance guarantee set for section 32-36.
Oh,
How do we
I'm
know how
glad
much
you-
money that is? How do you determine that? And would you figure a sidewalk to go, like, enough sidewalk money to go all the way down the entire thing of Megan Road too? Or just the part on Grange Hall Road?
So, to answer your question, it would be between the township engineer and the applicant's engineer. And so, it sounds like in the past, when this has come up, the applicant's engineer would prepare an estimate. Here's how much it would cost, and we would let them know, here's the termination point. And I have a question out to our engineer, because Grange Hall and that intersection, where exactly are we gonna terminate that? The safety path requirement is along Grange Hall only. So what we'll do is, the township's engineer will say, here's the area or the amount of frontage that you need to prepare an estimate for. They'll send that to us, our engineer would review that estimate, and that would be amount that would be deposited in the payment to the pathway fund.
But that really never puts a sidewalk there. It's just, isn't that kind of like bribery money to the town? I don't
Well,
wanna make it sound
Since
simple.
the fund, which just goes put a sidewalk someplace else. But we take their money.
And you can make more money if it's
It's a
April
tool
wide.
that
What it boils down to.
municipalities- It's very commonly used to help fill those gaps that we're talking about.
Right,
Put it
I
somewhere
mean,
else.
I realize what you're talking about, but it just seems, I don't know.
And so at a
Kinda
later
sketchy.
date,
It
when
does
he wants
seem sketchy.
sidewalks in,
It
how do
does.
they get them?
Pay off all the rest.
What's that?
I said, so my question is, someday in the future, then he wants those in, how does he get them put in?
That's when he
If
finds
you
out we
would
spent
like
the
to
money
install
already.
sidewalks,
No,
it's
no,
not necessarily-
you're taking the money, what my question is,
Yeah.
you're taking it for future installment, but you're gonna use it elsewhere.
See,
How does
three
he
of those
then,
houses want sidewalks
5
in
years from
now.
now, get his sidewalks put in?
Yeah.
If he's already paid the money?
So,
Then the township's
I mean,
on the hook for
I mean,
putting
this is a
in his
legit
sidewalks.
question, and we're in an area where sidewalks are not even reasonable out there.
exactly.
And so why are we requiring them? If we are requiring them, how does he get them if he decides he wants to put them in so that there may be access to the fire hall?
Well, he probably wouldn't, but whoever ends up
No,
buying
but
that lot
somewhere down the
someday
road,
might,
10
for
years
sure.
down the road,
And they would
20
say,
years
hey,
down the
this
road.
money got deposited, 12 years ago into an account.
Right.
I was making 3% on it. Should
That's,
get this
that's what
money
I'm
for my
getting at,
sidewalk
because
now.
otherwise,
Yeah.
if I could see this being developed in 20 years, where there would be a need for sidewalks out there, I could see that, but I don't see that. Not in our future developments and planning. It's a major thoroughfare. I can't see that being something that would be necessary. So that's where my question comes in. If it does become necessary, how does that person get the sidewalks put in that he's now paid for
Or
in
thinks
his
he's paid for it.
development?
That's good.
But, you know what I'm
I
saying?
think once the plan's developed and all that, the attorney will work all that out and that will be presented to you, I'm sure.
We can
Right.
give you
It's a lot
further
of money
detail
for
on
this
that process
Just
when this
wondering.
comes back. What I'll say is that the way the safety path ordinance is written, there are a few cases that it offers. In this case, here's what's required, kind of thing. One of them is if there's no anticipated development in the next 10 years for these sidewalks to connect to, we're saying it's unreasonable to require them to install them today, that we're not letting them off the hook of the requirement. Grange Hall Road is designated as a safety path, as we've been talking about, the route. But we can't, at least the way the ordinance is written now, say, well, you folks down on Grange Hall and Fish Lake have to install them right now, but this guy, technically he's required, but he doesn't have to install it and he doesn't have to pay.
Yeah.
It would be an unequal treatment of the regulation, unequal application of it, you could say. In terms of your question about, well, if we collect money today and then 10 years from now, it does seem like there's connections to be built. Who pays for it? What happens then? I think that's maybe a question up in the air. I don't necessarily have an answer to that
Right.
right now,
Well,
but
it's,
I also think that it's a part of what at the board level needs to be discussed in terms of how do we want to develop a sidewalk network? Is this, the way the ordinance is written today, is this how we want to do it? Do we want to have this fund established and then
I wanna draw
at that
this out
point,
forever,
how
but-
do we decide where that fund is spent? Do we need to determine gaps that will, rather than requiring an installation here with no connection, if we spend that same amount of investment elsewhere, we'll make a big impact. And the township just hasn't gotten to that point of
Okay.
the implementation of all of this.
right. So I have another question. So I'm sorry, but this is, being newer, I've got reservations, hard reservations, to be quite honest. So does a road have to be through the whole township designated? Or could there be a cutoff?
In terms of the safety path
Yeah.
plan,
Yeah, when's it end?
Yeah.
it's in the master plan, and so
Working good.
really, you could put,
You could
the
change it.
township could put whatever they like in terms of.
You could make an
routes
amendment.
and-
Yeah,
And
because,
We could send them.
I mean, I mean, listen, I'm 61 years here. I've watched it, and it hasn't developed in 61 years, and I'm not saying it wouldn't, but having it out to the manufactured home park and the condos into town makes a lot more sense than taking it all the way out to 75,
Yeah.
where this poor guy's now gonna have to put up money for a sidewalk that It might happen in 100 years, maybe.
But it's
But
not
I-
in front of your house, you got a shovel.
But I'm, you know, what I'm saying, but that's what I'm saying is, it's raising some other questions of, we did it through the whole area, but why not stop it at some place that seems way more logical
There's a book on
for,
this. Where did the sidewalk
for
end?
the next, say, 50 years versus
honest.
a 100-year plan potentially. That's all I'm saying is,
Really, it's getting back to our discussion earlier on a more detailed feasibility study.
Well-
So what's in the master plan again is a high-level vision. Grange Hall, I think everyone can agree, is the main east-west connector.
Absolutely.
So I think at that time, the thought was, why not put a pathway through there? We can connect to certain other state park bike lanes or trails, things like that. But there wasn't necessarily enough resources to do a detailed parcel by parcel. Is this gonna be feasible?
right.
Type of analysis done?
Yeah, it seems like they missed the mark in some ways because this could have been done incrementally. They could have taken it to here and then later on, as that develops, okay, there's a desirability out to here now. Now we make a modification.
And I will say that master plans can be amended. You don't have to wait 5 years to update them.
Right.
We're already into year 2 of the adoption, so in about 3 years, it'll be due to update anyway, but, to update a master plan or even amend it does take township resources. So to have McKenna or another firm update the plan to actually do and conduct that feasibility
Right.
analysis is something that, going back to the board, has to be a decision that, okay, we want to make this sidewalk network happen, this pathway
Right.
plan, we want to bring it to fruition. How are we going to do that actually functionally?
Sure.
And, you know, the safety path ordinance that we have now, I can find out
But-
when it was adopted, but I don't know that there was that level of analysis done when that ordinance was
So
written.
let's say we do all the analysis in the next 5 years, and we look at it and we're like, we're not gonna go that far. Do we refund this guy his money?
See,
I think we're back to that.
I think we're back to,
It's
yeah,
weird
we're kind of
because-
back to where I
and
was
that's
at
why we're
before.
getting onto, like,
Right.
well, okay, it was like a 60,000, foot view, and we just drew a line, and yeah.
Right.
But now, hey, I need 80 grand because you got an 8-foot sidewalk that I may have to be put in. Because I mean, it's a road.
Yeah, in a 5-year
Not quite
period, I
sidewalk,
mean, I
you
guess
know.
the way I look at it is, and I'm a little green behind the gills on this as far as learning,
Yeah.
but yeah, it makes more sense that
We should be
this
a little more
would
dialed in.
always could be looked at every 5 years, and if we need to amend it and add on as we're developing, then that makes logical sense, but to do it, I'm looking at this situation, and this poor guy's got to put X amount of dollars up for something that goes nowhere that'll never get used.
Well, but he is getting
Well, it may never actually get built.
an awful big break on being able to divide it. This-
I
So, you know,
understand,
I
I just don't,
He's already got that.
I don't
Yeah.
like developing
He's got it.
something that sits out in the middle of nowhere.
Okay.
And the logic is it'll never happen until 100 years from now. I mean,
And this is, I think, a very common
I know.
challenge that, again, communities deal with. How do we?
Jake will tell us
Yeah.
next month how to do this right?
We're all very interested.
I think a bit of it is that we're so undecisive on like even 8 foot or 5 foot. I mean, we haven't like nailed that down.
Right.
And then we're trying to say, okay, now they need some sort of a sidewalk
And I-
somewhere to here that may never fruition anywhere.
And I
And you got a
do
board
know
that
that
maybe
we have
wasn't on
access
board
to a
with that
lot
whole
of
sidewalk thing in the first place.
state and county
Right.
parks that would be nice, but I don't see that happening because you can't get it around the lakes. You can't get the pathway around on Grange Hall to be able to put it in without huge,
Have you-
with
have you
huge
been
money.
Fenton and Linden lately?
Huge.
They're putting a sidewalk across the lake.
Yeah, right, I know, I saw that.
All right, so make sure you go. Don't say they can't.
Well, yeah, right.
So you could look into some type of threshold trigger as well. Like in
Yes.
previous communities,
That's what I'm saying.
a subdivision and it's 70% developed. Once it crosses that threshold, you would do a special assessment and to finish,
Right.
right? So
Right.
I mean, you could determine once sidewalk or some type of path is established on X amount of properties and this amount of distance.
Right, which-
along this
Yes,
road that has been identified in the master plan, the township would take action to either pursue grant opportunities, bond, or special assessment, or
Right.
something to that extent. So it's not like this would never happen, it's just a matter of finding out how.
Yeah, and I think that's where sometimes we get a little too excited about developing and being up to date with things, which is great, but the growth in this community, if in the last since 1865, has not grown that much to see that development happening tomorrow, you know? So,
I have more applications on my plate than, again, like we've had in the last
sure,
5, 6, 7 years.
And that's probably why you want to nail this down, so that it's in the plan.
Absolutely.
And I get it, but I also don't want, sitting on a board, I don't want to face the backlash of, we don't have a connection from our high school. Kids are walking along the road, and we're putting a sidewalk to nowhere out to Grange Hall that's going out to 75 that
Right.
nobody's ever going to walk on. In my brain, I'm like, gosh, this just seems like we're spending a lot of time on something like that. And I get it, maybe that money that he puts aside, we could actually do, like Chuck said, make a sidewalk that goes down to the manufactured home. But then I also feel like we're taking somebody else's money and doing something with it that we're going to have to answer up to. If he decided 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, he wants those
If that
sidewalks.
guy's gonna pony up the money, the guy's gonna say, put in my sidewalk.
Yeah, that's,
He's not
I
gonna
would,
say,
yeah. I'm not
They
gonna
tried
say,
making me
Put
do
it
this,
in.
and they said, oh, they'll plant trees. No, I'll plant the trees. I'm not gonna give
Right.
you money to plant trees, because I don't trust you.
Right.
So, you're gonna have the guy will end up with a sidewalk, 8 foot wide, and
And-
it'll be a great new driveway for him.
yeah.
Because he'll just park cars on there and everything else, because, I mean, just,
I just
agree,
see the
it's stupid,
four-wheelers
8
going
foot
up and
wide.
down it and everything like that up there.
so that was,
So
yeah,
that
that
conservation
was my
easement won't
concern.
affect putting a sidewalk or
Yeah,
a
that's what I'm
pathway
thinking.
through?
That is a question that I'd like to.
Because that would make it side, well, then they'd have to be back in their
Yeah, then
lawn.
we're back
kind
to
of
the
thing.
drawing
Yeah,
board
then
on
you lose your
that
trees.
deal.
That may be why I offered it.
Maybe there's ulterior
Yeah,
motive to
yeah,
that.
you
Yeah,
say
because
not to put a
that
sidewalk
one
in now.
tree looks like it's gonna be right in where you know what I mean? There are all these pathways of trees, I guess it would be right.
And the other
where
comment I had
sidewalks
too
would be.
is, isn't all the property on to the east of this, state land? I'm not sure where it ends, where this
now
property
there's
ends.
there's a 10-acre parcel next to him.
So on to the north, you're saying there's still, across the road is.
No, I'm going, I'm east of
the fire-
Green.
But there's still a space in between here in the fire hall.
Okay.
But
Yes,
I think,
and
and that was part of
that's a
state land
10
that was
acre-
traded back and forth with the Laring family to be able to
Yeah,
have the fire hall.
there's a 10-acre parcel that the Allen family still owns.
Okay,
Yep.
still to the, on Grange Hall Road then?
Yes.
Okay, so
Yeah.
we still, so potentially more could go in there then, okay, that's what I wasn't sure of.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, here's what I'll say about the whole pathway things. I know we talked a lot about it.
I know, we seem to be stuck on the sidewalk thing, aren't we? I'm sorry, we really are.
You've got great questions, and what I will say is that to some extent, we've all inherited this ordinance. We've inherited certain aspects of the.
Fix it, will you?
Yeah,
Right.
Addressing all of this so
Right.
that we don't have this conversation on every application.
Yep.
But
Nope.
we can't stop accepting and processing applications while we're fixing it.
Right.
And so, you know, I totally understand, and I feel as well that with certain things, it feels like our hands are tied. And that's why we need to update the ordinance. And so, you know, we've been noting your questions. Again, we're at the preliminary approval stage. The conservation easement, while included on the concept plan with the conditional rezoning, hasn't been recorded yet. So the conditional rezoning
Right.
agreement stated that it shall be prepared in accordance with the other condominium documents. So I don't know where that puts us. I think at the time of reviewing the conditional rezoning, we weren't reviewing the site plan standards, and I don't recall discussions about this pathway requirement. So it wasn't taken into consideration at that time. I think that, you know, I'm happy to answer further questions. I have we've been trying to help with the motions. I've got a couple copies of this.
I know.
If someone else would like to make a motion, it's just a sample based on my recommendation of conditional approval. But
Is it too much for you, Ron?
Oh, yeah. Mike's our professional on it.
Sorry. Don't mean to laugh so loud.
one other thing that I'll mention
Pass it
is
on.
that And this is something that we'd like to iron out between, again, the applicant, who I was gonna be here tonight, but also the building official, is you'll notice on the plans there are some existing silos. From when this was actively used for agriculture. They are dilapidated and I think upwards of 30 feet tall, maybe taller. The fire department actually pointed it out, and the township engineer said, you know, we would at least need to see a structural analysis to show that those aren't a danger. It might become an issue in terms of a dangerous building code violation. At this time, I've not gotten any clarity from the applicant in terms of how they'd like to proceed with these silos. I think when we had done the conditional rezoning, I just assumed they want to demolish them, but we don't have that on the site plan. And so that's something that, again, we'll be verifying between now and the final approval, and that we'd want to nail down before we bring it back to you. So just another a note, I guess, and in the recommendation, you'll see there's a variety of things that they need to submit in terms of just required documents for a final approval stage, but then there's also a few items, these things we've been talking about, conditions that we want to see addressed on site plan.
So Mike, you're ready to read that? And I assume that's a motion to...
It says preliminary approval for site condominium.
Yep.
There was a section for 2. Is it just 1 then?
So I left the 2 blank in case there was something else that came up in discussion if you wanted to add any conditions.
But it's just preliminary, so you'll have a lot to
Yeah.
add for the next time anyway, correct?
Yeah.
Yes,
This
so
is just preliminary.
the action tonight will allow the applicant to move into that next stage, and he'll be able to submit those condominium documents. And that is a big piece of this, because again, it's going to address the easement, the pathway, even if, you know, depending on the outcome, they may need to provide the easement for that. So the legal descriptions of the property and how it will be split will be submitted, and additional engineering documents, something to address the silos will be required, so.
So what did we do last year? Wasn't that preliminary then?
Last year was just a separate process. That
Okay,
was to
well, I mean,
rezone.
I'm not trying to slow it down, so that was,
Right.
so this is
That was
kind
just
of, we're
zoning.
add to that.
Preliminary
So
2.0 or something, right?
Mike,
I
we're
mean,
ready.
Right.
Yeah, so it's just a separate process is really what it is.
Okay.
Okay, Mike.
We're good?
Yeah.
Yep.
You like
I'm
it?
about to make a motion for Mike to be able to read the minute.
All right, I move to grant preliminary approval of site condominium encompassing 6 residential units on parcel ID 01-22-476-007 per the conditional rezoning agreement on this site dated September 10th, 2025, contingent on the following conditions. The following are addressed before final approval is granted. 1, notation of all trees to be retained and to determine compliance with the landscaping requirements in section 32-192 and whether the replacement is required per section 32-204. 2, per the conditional rezoning of the subjected property, a 3.04 acre conservation easement is to be preserved. The area of the conservation easement must be identified on Unit 1 per the agreement, with no clearing of existing vegetation permitted except to allow for appropriate ingress and egress. Fancy words. 3, the proposed driveways must be found acceptable to the Oakland County Road Commission and minimize disturbance to the conservation easement. The existing silos and barn foundation on the site are required to be mitigated in a manner that is deemed appropriate by the township engineer and building official. Requirements of section 14-253, section A5 regarding safety paths are met.
Is there a second for that? motion?
Second.
Second by Derek. I do have some questions. My experience with that site is there's a lot of scrubby trees that are just junk trees there. I'm hoping that's not too restrictive. I know there's some nicer trees along Quick Road, or no, not Quick Road,
Fagan.
Fagan Road, and possibly a few where the house used to be there, but the rest of that is just scrubby stuff that you wouldn't want as part of your land. So anyway, I'm just hoping that this isn't too restrictive on that part, is that they have to do much to get rid of some of that scrubby stuff, because it will look much better without.
To just reassure you, the tree protection ordinance does stipulate if they are dead, diseased, invasive species, and also if they're too small, like if it's just a sapling, you don't have to replace it. So the intent behind the ordinance, and it is very thorough, is that
Many,
they
many
have
too many
to tell
pages,
us-
yes.
Well, and we need them to tell us and verify from an arborist, is it scrubby trees or are there, you know, I can't take something off of, I'm not an arborist, so I can't let them out of that requirement unless they submit that tree inventory.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
Any further discussion on the motion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion passed. Any reports? Anybody want to say anything? No public comments? Ask for adjournment. And we have a motion.
Motion adjourned.
Moved by Derek, second by Ben. Those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed, same sign. Motion passed. We're adjourned. So they only waited 50 years, where my office.
Now that you've seen a little bit of what you're about to
North
get
Holly
into,
Road
you sure
in
you still want to
Patterson
do
School,
it?
there was no sidewalks anyplace from that school except for the overpass that went away. Those kids had to walk down that for years, but 50 years later, they finally put a sidewalk.
It is good
on
that
one
we're
side of
seeing the
road.
growth, but
But they
it's
should have been
like
there years ago.
Right.
logic for me. I'm
You know,
in the real estate.
senior
Oh, man,
apartments, the
thanks.
senior villages
Yep,
there.
Woodland.
They finally put it in.
I
but
can see it
It
at some
just took a
point
long
then,
time.
Yeah.
where there might be one.
They've got some type of
Say
grants, I
had to
think, for
get
that
to the
because
park or
of
something.
low income
But that's
areas.
so
something
far
for
down.
village, but
That's gonna get destroyed before it ever is used. You know, where that, like, to me, it's logical to do integrations.
Yes.
You know, where
I really think it should
it
be.
would make sense.
How can the township do that?
Manufacture.
I will do that, thank you. Trying not to, I just had a root canal that I came here from there.
Into town.
I'm still a little numb, so I'm
That's
trying to
step
stop
one.
it
Then
so it
it'd be-
doesn't sound like I just left.
Then all the way over to Vegas.
I just left Redwood Dental.
Yeah, because it's a big hurdle as you go around that first curve going
Thank you.
out of town. There's a marshy swamp that comes right up by the road, and there's no explanation. And then it's on the other side.
I just don't like the money thing. I don't like
Well, I don't want to take
the,
the money from one and say, oh, we could use it someplace else.
I just feel like it could
There's just a whole
become
bunch
just
of
weird down the road, you know what I mean? And like he said, but I think if somebody puts up $80,000, they're gonna put this
yards
up.
aren't-
They're not gonna say, here, you take care of this for me, okay?
So then where do you put it there? So now
Yeah.
all of a sudden you're in the middle of people. So it just, you know what I'm saying? It's like,
Yeah.
I like progress.
That's what I'm saying, especially if we're doing
even
eight,
like
if
our
it
town
stays with this 8-foot thing.
the town center zoning that we put out it's in the wrong spot, in my opinion. Because that's not, that to me is not where the
Yeah,
mixed use is really gonna
that's
be
why I'm
valued.
confused on. You know, and coming in late to the game here and not really knowing what the back part of this was, you know?
Vacant land, that would be ideal for that.
I don't know, because I don't wanna sound like I'm like totally against it, but I'm just like, screw the sidewalks, I'm fine, but I'm just like, I don't see the need for it.
You know, but
like
it's
it.
again, they had to put it somewhere they needed to put it in there. And now, you know, I think we're all
Yeah, it
going,
just doesn't, right now, I'm
We
just a
can
little
walk down there
lost on what,
60
I guess,
years, you know, how is that gonna happen tomorrow? Well, it will eventually.
hooking it all together.
Hopefully it will.